My sister Allie and I inherited a toy box from our grandmother when she passed away. One of the few things my parents considered worth salvaging from her possessions. The rest of them were sent away to Goodwill or to the junkyard, or were passed around any relatives that cared to claim them. The toy box nobody had wanted, and so it ended up with us. Allie and I hated it on sight and avoided putting anything into it we valued, not least because things seemed to go missing from it on a regular basis. The chest was made of a grimy varnished wood, a grinning bear painted in a 1940s cartoon style on every side. You could tell that it was supposed to be cute, but the artist had done a bad job of it. The bear's eyes oddly humanoid and threatening, its smile full of overlarge teeth with a fat tongue protruding grossly through the middle. How that drawing had ever been deemed appropriate for children, I don't know. But then things like that passed in those days. Neither of our parents seemed to see anything wrong with it anyway. "Grandma would have wanted you to have it," Mom said in stern response to our complaints. "Don't you think so?" Allie and I looked at each other and shrugged. We'd never seen much of our grandmother while she was alive, only during the holidays. Even then, she'd mostly sit in an armchair drinking whiskey and getting emotional about her brother, who'd allegedly run away when he was 10 or so and had never come home. We had no idea if Grandma even loved us, let alone if she'd care whether or not we hung on to an old toy box that had surely only ever brought her bad memories. But our mother, teary, adamant, insisted that we keep it even after Allie admitted that it was giving her nightmares. She wasn't the only one. I took to throwing a blanket over the box at night, convinced that I could see the bear's eyes blinking in the dark, its hairy lips moving around words I could only ever decipher in dreams. The bear trap was mostly empty by that point. We'd gotten into the habit of hiding our favorite toys at the bottom of the wardrobe, after noticing the vast majority of the things we stored in the maligned box were lost soon after, or eaten as we believed. When the time came for Allie to move into her own room, we had a heated argument about which of us had to keep the bear trap. I argued that since I got the old bedroom, it was only fair that she took it off my hands, whereas Allie insisted that it may as well stay where it was, and that moving it could only be a bad idea. In the end, she got her way, triggering a feud between us that went on for a solid month. It only ended with the announcement that our cousin Harry was coming over for Christmas, forcing us to agree to a temporary truce in order to manage the crisis. Harry was just 2 years younger than us, but he still acted like a little kid, clingy and deliberately annoying in whatever way provoked the biggest reaction out of us. Whenever our aunt and uncle stayed over, we were expected to keep our cousin occupied, meaning out of the way of the adults, who were not exempt from Harry's reign of terror. "We've got to do something about him," said Allie. "If he starts repeating everything I say like the last time, I'm going to freak out. Like, seriously, I'll go insane." "I know," I said somberly. "Remember when he broke that chair and Dad went nuts at us like it was our fault?" Allie groaned. "Yeah. Or that time he kept bouncing that tennis ball off of everything." I nodded. "He did it all night. I grabbed it and hid it somewhere, and he started yelling his ass off." Allie threw herself onto my bed and screamed into the pillow. "God, I can't stand him." "So what do we do?" I asked. "If we don't come up with something before he gets here, we're screwed." The conversation was taking on the severity of a war room debate. "We still have a week before we have to see him," said Allie. "That's enough time, right?" "I don't know," I said. "I hope so." By the day Harry arrived, my sister and I had come to an agreement to keep him distracted with as many games as we could think of. Being that he had such a short attention span, nothing worked until Allie suggested hide-and-go-seek, which brought out a rare competitive focus in him we'd never seen before, and knew we likely never would again. Every time Allie or I ended up as it, We'd spend a long time pretending to look for Harry around the house, dragging out the search for as long as we could before finding him and starting another round. We made a huge show of frustration in our losses to keep Harry on the hook, concealing our laughter as he punched the air and whooped before charging off again, determined to beat us some more. It was during our 5th turn of the game that we realized we genuinely could not find him anywhere, having searched every room and every possible hiding spot there was. We'd grown up in that house, knew every part of it as well as we knew each other. We knew too that Harry hadn't left the property. Both the front and back doors were locked, and there were no footprints to be seen outside in the snow. Panting like runners, Allie and I sat together at the top of the stairs, amazed at having been truly defeated. Then we looked at each other and a live wire jolt of understanding sparked us both to our feet again. "The bear trap," I said. "It's the last place he could be." "Could he even fit in there?" Allie asked, trying to sound doubtful. Harry was slight for his age and more than a head shorter than I'd been then. With the toy box being the size of a large coffee table, he could have curled up inside pretty comfortably and could have breathed just fine if he propped the lid open a crack. I wondered with a twisting horror if he'd forgotten to do this and had suffocated to death while we'd been looking for him. But that didn't feel right somehow. I didn't know how to explain it to Allie, so I kept my mouth shut until we were both in my room, looking at the bear trap as though the animal painted on its many faces would rear up and maul us if we got too close. "You'd better open it," I said. Allie shoved her hands in her pockets and shook her head. "It's your room, so it's your box. You open it." We were both scared, talking fast, fiddling with our clothes, anything but doing what needed to be done. "What if he's dead?" I asked, and Allie flicked her eyes to me without moving her head, so I saw mostly the whites. "Don't," she muttered. "Just don't say that, okay?" I think even then we understood that neither of us would see Harry alive again. The way the jigsaw puzzles and Lego sets we'd cast to the bottom of the chest had never been recovered. We knew that the box was more than a box, knew that we'd been keeping something dangerous in the house without comprehending what exactly it was. "If he is dead," said Allie, "what are we gonna do?" "Maybe he won't be," I said. "Not everything we put in there goes away, right? There's still some old junk inside." Allie chewed anxiously at the tail of her braid. "Yeah," she said, "but most of it goes away." Using the tip of one sneaker, I eased open the lid of the bear trap and kicked it until it fell open against the wall. Apart from a few sad-looking action figures and dusty boxes, there was nothing inside except for 2 dirty footprints where Harry must have been curled up at the bottom. He'd been there all right, and now he was gone from it in a way that meant the bear trap had swallowed him. Allie turned me another wide-eyed, sideways glance. "We can't tell anyone about this," she whispered. "They'll say we did it to him." In a kind of cold adult amazement, I stared back at her. "Allison," I said slowly, "you don't get it. Mom and Dad don't see the bear trap like we do. Even if we did tell anybody about it, they'd just think we were lying. They'll never know." We were both right in our way. When we told our family we'd lost Harry, we were immediately held responsible. Why hadn't we watched him more closely? Hadn't we heard him going outside? Why had we left it so long to tell them he'd gone when some stranger was probably driving away with Harry in the trunk that very moment? The cops asked similar questions when they inevitably came by. Allie and I stuck to the same story, which aside from the one significant omission was the truth. We were both grounded for months, which I grimly tolerated, and Allie took to like a guilty prisoner, having accepted her share of the blame. I resented that Mom had left us with the bear trap, that there was no way to make the adults understand what had really happened that day. It made me bitter and quiet, a teenager before my time. Mostly I was afraid, however. I kept imagining that one day I'd be made to climb into the box, that it would close on me, bite me in half. Whenever I sat up at night, I thought I saw the lid open and shut under the sheet I'd thrown over it, mocking me. I'd projected some kind of evil onto the bear trap for so long that it felt alive to me in some way, and I hated it so intensely that my anger was all that held me up against my fear. I never expected to learn what happened to my cousin, supposing he'd simply dropped out of existence like a word scratched off a page. Wherever things went when they were lost under beds or down cracks in the sidewalk was where he was. Or so I thought until, at the end of February, 2 men in suits and overcoats turned up at our front door. What they said to my parents to let them in and talk to them, I'll never know. As far as they're concerned, those men never came by, sticking resolutely to the story they were given to repeat until it became the only truth there was. After they'd spoken to the family, one of the strangers came upstairs to interview Allie and me one after the other. He talked to me last, knocking on my bedroom door and letting himself in before I even had the chance to answer. "Hi, Reese," he said. "You know why I'm here, don't you?" I did, having gotten the sense of it watching his expensive car pull up in front of the house. "You want to talk about Harry?" I said reluctantly. "But I know you're not a cop, they came over already." The man certainly didn't look like a police officer, and I wouldn't have believed him if he'd claimed to be. He could only have been 20 at the most, with a blonde surfer boy haircut and a piercing in his left eyebrow. I noticed that he smelled of mint gum and a popular brand of cologne, obnoxiously strong, and that there was something not right about his eyes. Maybe it's how blue they were, like contacts on a movie set, or how hard he stared when he was talking. If he blinked even once, I didn't notice. I tried not to look at him, my eyes on the tips of his black shoes, which were obviously new. "You're right, Reese," the man said. "I'm not a cop, not exactly. My name is Creed Jansen, and my colleague Milo and I clear up situations like yours. Tie loose ends at things like that. Certain situations require certain people. Does that make sense to you?" "I guess so," I said. "You're government agents or something." Creed grinned. His teeth were very straight, most likely veneers. "Agents," he repeated, "something like that." Any other kid might have been scared or excited by the admission. As it was, I felt nothing but the brutal stamp of dread. "You found Harry somewhere," I said, "and you know about the bear trap." Creed nodded. "You mean the toy box? Allison filled us in." There was no disbelief or sense of humoring a child's fantasy in his tone as I'd anticipated. I looked at him directly then, astonished to realize that he had received the story without any surprise whatsoever. "I should tell you right now that we found your cousin's body," said Creed. "We were tipped off about a cadaver that had been discovered in a forested area just over the Canadian border. He'd been dead when he arrived there, curled up on his side in the snow, and there were no signs of any living person having been in the area to have dumped or posed the body in that position. It was like he dropped out of the sky, only we both know that's not what happened." I glanced into the corner of the room where the bear trap lay under its shroud. "The box," I whispered, "it sent him there." "I'm afraid it did," said Creed. "Wasn't the first time it did something like that either." His voice was that of a salesman, lively but professional. "There was another body within a 3-mile radius of your cousin's," he continued. "It had been there, well, a long time. As I understand it, your grandmother had a brother that ran away." Here Creed mimicked air quotes with one hand. "Yeah," I said shakily. "Roger. He was 11, nearly 12, I think. He used to run away a lot, but one time he never came back. Grandma was always talking about it. I remember she got drunk one Thanksgiving and told us she knew that he was dead. I sat down on the edge of my mattress, feeling weightless and vaguely ill. For whatever reason, Roger must have gotten into that box, said Creed, and when he got out, he was somewhere very far away. You see, Roger survived the journey. Shock killed Harry, or some other condition of that kind of travel we don't fully understand. Roger was a little more tough. He tried to get by out there in the forest, lived on what he could, walked some distance hoping to find his way out, but the cold got to him. Where we found the bodies, there were toys everywhere covered in snow, some of them old, some of them new. Guessing they were yours. I said that they were. Well, said Creed, that helps us out a lot. That's confirmation both bodies arrived in the area in the same way, which we already knew. But this is what I'm paid to do, Reese. Tie up all those loose ends into a neat little bow. What is the box? I asked. Why do things disappear out of it? Does it do it on purpose? Creed smiled. No more than a door opens or a hallway leads somewhere else. You see, the box is just a box, or it was at one time. That changed. See, from time to time openings appear in space, or even objects that are shortcuts to other places. Sometimes they just appear naturally all by themselves. Like wormholes, I said, thinking of the sci-fi shows my dad watched endlessly in the living room on gray afternoons. You get it, said Creed, a lot like that. But sometimes these shortcuts aren't all that stable, which makes them dangerous, or people stumble into them without knowing what they are or where they'll end up. And they're the ones Milo and I have to investigate. That kind don't just appear on their own. There's generally a reason. Creed paused, waiting for me to ask a leading question. When I only looked dully at him, he said, "The toy box, or the bear trap as you guys call it, used to belong to your grandmother and your great-uncle Roger. And like I said before, when it arrived at the house, it really was just a box. But after a while, it turned into something else. See, these shortcuts sometimes occur when in the presence of a young person with unused and likely undiscovered psychic abilities. Milo and I looked into your family history. Seems that Roger was having problems fitting in with his peers, fought a lot with his parents, felt like they just didn't get him, and he wasn't wrong. There was a reason he wasn't like everybody else, but there was no way for him to understand that or get the help he needed." Taking the chewing gum from his mouth, Creed looked around hopefully for a trash can, resigning himself to putting the wad into a twist of paper in his pocket before unwrapping another. "All the ability Roger wasn't using and all that discomfort just built right up," he said. "Got stronger and stronger until it started creating a shortcut. Usually they form in places that are already doorways or openings of some sort. A lidded box is as good as any. Roger had no idea what he was making in there, not consciously anyway. But his subconscious, the part of him that was lonely and angry with everybody, that knew. I looked down at the floorboards, their little lines wiggling in my vision like drunken worms. "That's why the box leads to the wilderness," I said, "because Roger wanted to run somewhere far away." "Bang on the money," said Creed, extending a hand to ruffle my hair until I cringed away. "Poor guy just got unlucky. One day he hid in that box, maybe after some fight with his parents or playing a game like Harry, and then he was gone. The shortcut wasn't strong enough for him to get back through, and it stayed just as unstable all these years later. I bet you noticed not everything you put in the box got lost, right?" "Right," I echoed. "The shortcut was weak. Maybe one day it might have broken down and gone away altogether if the bear trap hadn't ended up with you and Allison." I gazed at Creed again, and as his eyes met mine, I shuddered, disturbed by the familiarity of the gesture. "You knew that there was something off with that box right away, didn't you?" asked Creed gently. And you know other things that maybe don't make sense. Both you and your sister feel that same way. You're twins, aren't you? Yeah, I said. Well, there you go, it's more likely in twins, inheriting abilities like the ones Roger had, and you both got the luck of the draw. As you got older and those powers got a little stronger, you stabilized the shortcut. Probably wouldn't have been able to if there weren't two of you. It's been a long time after all. It should have broken down by now. But two kids with the same psychic focus, the same grievance. Creed trailed off, leaving me horrified by the implication of his words. We didn't want Harry to disappear, I said, not like that. We didn't mean to kill him. Did you tell him to stay away? Asked Creed innocently. I mean, no, but we didn't know. We didn't know. I swallowed, flushed with panic. We didn't, okay? Of course not, said Creed, patting my shoulder. Milo and me, we know that. We get it, you're kids. Mistakes like this happen all the time. That's why we're here. We're going to take the box with us and put it somewhere out of the way. Milo's downstairs, figuring out the legal side of things. We need to agree on a more straightforward version of events, something the police can sign off on. I watched Creed heft the box under one arm, his slim figure unhindered by its weight. You mean we gotta lie about what happened, I said. More like approach things from a more grounded angle. But sure, let's go with that. You've been doing just fine on that front even before we got here. Yeah, I admitted. But it's wrong to lie, right? I expected Creed to correct me with a more palatable phrase. Instead he said, it's how we keep stuff like this quiet, Reese, which is how we keep people safe. What if something else happens, I asked. You know, another accident. Now that you know about your abilities, you should be all right. Like being aware of your own strength, so keep aware. Maybe you'll see me again, maybe you won't. Let's hope you won't. Creed readjusted the box in his arms, rolling one shoulder slightly. I'd better get going. There's a lot more work out there needing to be done. Bye, Reese. I opened the bedroom door for him and hung back as he carried the bear trap downstairs and out of the house, the other dark-haired stranger following close behind. Allie slunk out of her own room to stand beside me at a nearby window as we watched them load the box into the car they'd arrived in. Are you okay? I asked once they were gone. Allie's eyes were red-rimmed, the result of private crying. Not really, she said. Me neither. I sat on the windowsill, surprised that the grief I wanted to feel did not come. All that was over months ago. What did the other guy do, I asked. The one who stayed downstairs with Mom and Dad. He made them sign some stuff, said Allie. I listened. They're not allowed to talk about what happened. They have to tell people some creepy man took Harry away. But there wasn't a man, it was us. Are we bad people now, Reese? Allie looked at me with huge watery eyes, and I felt sorry for her as though of the two of us she was the only child in the room. No, Allie, I told her, we're not bad people. But I didn't believe it. Said it only to comfort her or unsuccessfully convince myself that it was so. I couldn't tell my sister how afraid I was of these certain people coming by again, or how I wasn't sure that an awareness of what we were capable of was enough to keep us from doing something wrong again. There were so many nights after that I felt the box feeling of the uncanny and wondered if I was opening other shortcuts somewhere, or building something new and unspeakable that even together my sister and I could not control. I wished we'd never learned what had happened to Harry, that I didn't know what we could do or what we'd done,